Real African stories, real African experiences. This is the Legally Clueless video series, proudly powered by Guinness Black Shine's Brightest. Stay tuned to the end to find out more. And in this episode, Wanjiku shares her story of the making of her creative events business.
Hi, my name is Wanjiku and I am from Nairobi. I had a very beautiful childhood. It was full of interesting curiosities because my dad had a love of music, love of books, love of gardening, and I think he passed that on to me and my sister. And I think that is the first time I ever had an encounter with creativity, because he just made us fall in love with all these things that we weren't primarily exposed to because of the sort of school system that we had. So for me as a child, my favorite subjects were art, though I am very, very good in maths because maths, I think, is just one of those things that was also passed on in our family. But I really, really love the arts. And my wonder or my curiosity was, what can my mind create that could leave some level of impact in the world? And I think I have always carried that with it because I feel like we all have the ability to create in our own special way. So unfortunately, in primary and towards late primary and high school, my artistic side had to take a backbench. Reason being, I went to a school that didn't have art as a subject. So my background, I did the 3 sciences because that was the most exciting. I loved geography as well because, I mean, you get exposed to nature and creation and all this. And so for me, meeting with art or the creatives was in campus. So I went to Nairobi University and my undergrad was in actuarial science, which is very ironic because not artistic. But I think the moment I realized that I'm suited to be an artist was when I was going to sit for my economics paper. So in actuarial, there are these papers you have to sit on if you want to qualify to be an actuary. And I remember being at the door of the exam room and I think it was a voice. I want to say it's maybe the voice of God. And I was like, do you really want to do this the rest of your life? Because in as much as, yes, I did pass my exams, I did do well, I didn't get that sort of passion and joy from actuarial. So I was like, maybe this is not meant for me. And so I began that path of trying to figure out what am I supposed to do when I was in 3rd year. So I didn't do the exam. So I'd done 1 paper, I think, and I did well. My mom paid for the exams and I told her, you know what? I don't think I'm going to pursue actuarial. I'll finish the degree, but I want to get into the space of starting a creative business. Obviously, everyone was shocked. My classmates were shocked. My lecturers were shocked. And it was back in the day when entrepreneurship was a fairly new concept and given this name. So not a lot of people had dared to venture out into entrepreneurship. And so I remember when I came up with the idea for my business, a friend of my sister's was getting married and we went into Samantha Bridal, the wedding fair. And I stood at the door of Sarit and I was like, I think I have my business idea. What if I create a website and all the suppliers come and they advertise and I get money from it? And I did very simple maths because I'm a mathematician. I just took 1,000 bob and said, I just need 1,000 vendors and I get 1 million. And this is my big idea. And that's how I started actually. So I started off putting together the first wedding and events directory. And that was in the year 2007. That was the days of dial-up internet. I know many people may not remember that, but that's how we started. That's how I actually started my business. So I created this website and guys were like, you're crazy. How are you going to make money from a website? My mom was my biggest cheerleader. And she kept on saying, because she'd been in the corporate world for very long, and she kept on telling me, because she knows me, as in she's my mom, she thinks I have the qualities that I would need to be able to have a successful business, though it would take time. And to show you how much she was behind me, we managed to negotiate a deal and I sold her shareholding. And I told her, I'm going to pay you back all the fees. And on top of that, I'm going to make you like an owner of the business, part owner. Now, my dad, on the other hand, he's very traditional. So he didn't understand how I was going to start this business. I'm talking about the internet. The internet has just landed. And he's like, how are you going to make money? So for him, the shock or the lack of support maybe came from a place of he wasn't understanding, or he was worried that I was going to make it. So it took a lot of years for him to buy into my vision. But now he's a huge cheerleader. He's like, oh, I can't believe you have projects. Like the other day he called me and he was like, I can't believe you went to North Africa, because I had a project in Morocco to do this thing that you love. So I won him over, but they were on two different sides. So it was like a lot of drama in the house, because me, I'm like, this is my vision, this is what I want. And they each had a point, yeah. First, we didn't have internet in our houses. So you could either go to a cyber cafe or figure out how to go to like a restaurant. Because I remember I used to go to a cyber, and then I used to go to Java. There was a Java at the junction. They were like amongst the first restaurants that actually gave people wireless internet. And so coming up with the website was hectic, because first websites were very, very expensive. I remember spending, I think it was an equivalent of 70,000 bob. The website designer didn't know what he was doing. And it was shocking because I had little capital, because I sold my shares. So my mom had put this little form of trust for us when we were in high school. So I sold my shares to be able to start this business, and then sold shareholding to her and my sister. So with all the money I've gotten, I give it to this website designer who ends up making this really crappy website that doesn't work. But we just took whatever we had, the product that we had, it wasn't perfect, and we managed to get people who bought into the vision. The first person who ever bought a listing from me was Valentine Cake House. I think we all know Valentine. His name is Matthew. Matthew, I would say, is a person who started my dream of becoming an entrepreneur, because he was there for me. He's like, I don't know what you're selling. You seem to be very passionate about it, and I'm going to buy it. So he has been such a big part of my journey. So what I did, it was rough. The first clients to buy from me, I think I did maybe probably around 70 or 80 calls to all the people who provide weddings and event services. And I was really, really little. So I'd go try and pitch this big idea. I remember there's one person who told me, your idea is ridiculous. Go to the cyber cafe. Tell me, you think one day internet will be everywhere? And I was just like, okay, you may not buy it, but don't kill my dream. And so it's Matthew who started it up. Matthew, and there was a lady called Beatrice from Sweet Inspirations. She's a baker. They're the first two to ever buy from me. And now what happened is, under Matthew's wing, because he told me, see beyond just having a listing. He told me, find a way of attracting brides. And so I got into the space of content making. This is back in the days, this is 2007. And I started writing articles about weddings in Kenya and everything. So what happened, because I was writing the articles and there was no information on weddings in Kenya, brides from the diaspora started reaching out to me. They're like, okay, we see you're writing about weddings. Can you help me put together a wedding? And that's how I got into wedding planning. So this website didn't accomplish what I thought initially, but now it drove me into the wedding space, which is where I think now I started flourishing as a creative. When I got into weddings, I realized that everyone's wedding looked the same. We all had this balloon arc. There were tents on one side, cake in the middle. So in my writing, you see, I'm writing articles and I'm learning about what's happening in places like the States. There was this website called The Knot that I really, really loved. I started wondering, why is it that, everyone's wedding looks the same? Is there anything that I can do that can make these weddings different? And so I decided to do a bit of research, and I realized, what if I figure out a way of infusing the couple's personalities into the weddings? So we started doing theme weddings. And so our client was your upwardly mobile bride, or your bride who's exposed, who wants her wedding to be the talk of town. So we'd sit with them and we do this questionnaire and figure out what likes they have, what music they have. And people would come to the wedding and they'd be like, oh my God, I went to a wedding and it was totally different, because the cuisine, everything was made to suit the couple's personalities. So that was how we got into this space, and just looking out for opportunity and seeing that we can translate this opportunity in our own way is what helped us now be known in the wedding space as the people who do theme weddings. Because please remember, this was back in 2010. People didn't even know wedding planners existed. So you're here, you're telling people I'm a wedding planner, they're like, what? They can't understand. So now you're telling them to do a theme, they're like, what is this? So I think as a creative, you need to be bold enough to take that step because that is what propels you. I think the biggest experience is the fact that I could apply my curiosity in terms of creativity to these different scenarios. Like, it only took me to just sit down and listen to what brides and grooms are talking about for me to figure out what would make them happy. Also, the fact that just seeing them happy at the end of the day, and this wedding is them and it speaks to them. And up to now, I still meet with brides and grooms and they're like, my wedding, I've never forgotten you did this. Like, there's a particular wedding I'd probably like to highlight. There's this couple, the bride she loves musicals, and she wanted her whole wedding to be a musical production. And it was a musical production. From the way we did the church was like scene one, and her friends did this whole musical in church. This is Kenya, and it was the days for Gangnam Style, so she got people to like do Gangnam Style on that Westlands Bridge. There used to be the Westlands Bridge, and she had all these colorful Volkswagens, and the reception, each table was a musical she liked, so she had Sound of Music. It was really well done, and that was her wedding. So now seeing that, the fact that my brain with the couple's brain can bring this, it was amazing. So I still meet my brides. They still remember we did everything. We've done Arabian Nights. We've done name it. We've done it as a theme. And now I'm happy to see that the wedding industry has really, really grown, and people are doing these elaborate setups. Back in the day, it was very hard, but I think it took people like us to be able to stir that creativity in the industry. How I shifted from the wedding space into the corporate space is also because of opportunity. So my client at that time was looking for my first corporate client. I didn't even know they were my first corporate client. There was this what's called brief that was sent around that there's this client who's looking for someone who can understand their brand and be able to put it out. So they were having a children's event. So they have this event that they do around the world, and they wanted to celebrate football. And so they reached out to a couple of marketing agencies, and everyone was giving the same balloon arc, tent on one side, tent on the other side. And these guys are like, none of these marketing agencies understands what creating a brand is. So a friend of mine just happened to send me the brief, and she was like, Shiko, I know you do not work with corporates, but I think you need to sit down and look at this brief. And first, you look at the name and you're like, wow, as in, how would I ever defeat all these other marketing agencies? I'm just a wedding planner. And at that particular point, I was a solo outfit. I was just by myself. And I remember my mom telling me, you know what? Just take the opportunity. What's the worst thing that can happen? Just do it. So I started to look at the brief, and they were very clear. We're celebrating World Cup. Figure out how you can make it, but it has to be experiential. That's the first time I encountered the word experiential. So I sit down. Then we had no internet in the house. Look through the internet, and then I'm like, there are things we could do. We can bring in a cartoonist to help people create like a soccer magazine. We can hire the candy bar from the junction and bring it to the school. We can use Brookhouse, because Brookhouse is really nice. It's a school that has thought about learning from a child's perspective, and it's really, really beautiful. I had a friend who used to do customized t-shirts that had randomly met at a cinema called Kenya Cinema, selling, like he had a stand and he was selling t-shirts, and I took his number and we became really good friends. And I called him and I'm like, I have a gig for you and you can come and do customized t-shirts. And then I think we got someone to come and speak about football. So I put all these ideas into a theme. We created like a lounge. Then we didn't have these fancy lounges you see in events that have like PS. No, we had to literally go borrow people's PSs. So brought all that together, put it in a pitch, went to pitch. Now, when I got into the room, it was shocking. I'd never seen like a video conferencing unit. Guys, this is back in the day. So going and I'm being told you're being interviewed, the head of marketing sits in Israel and we're going to leave you alone in this room and you're going to answer questions. And I just started, I said, pitching. But I think the thing that she said was, you are so passionate about this. And I know you have no experience, you're a wedding planner, but let's give you the chance. And that's how I got my first client, and that was Google. It was a shock. It was like no one could believe, because Google is one of those names that can change your career. And they've been such a huge influence in my business, because now I was exposed to world-class events. Now I could see what creating a brand and putting together events for a brand means. Just having that name in my portfolio opened up so much. Obviously now the shocking thing I think for me was I would spend X amount of months, maybe 9 months doing a wedding, and I'd need to do like maybe 5 weddings to get what these guys would pay me in a job that I'd do in 1 month. So obviously the money was shocking. It was really, really good. But obviously you have that voice that asks you, are you really, really sure you can be able to do this? But since the team was very lean, and I think Google is a sort of organization that likes growing with small businesses, they easily just picked me up and they're like, you know what, we're going to expose you. So some of the things they did is they exposed me to trainings that were specific to event planners. They exposed me to just their brand itself, like how do you sit down and come up with an event that's branded, that's not so, balloon-aki, like how do you create an experience? And I'm always thankful to them. And so it felt good. It felt good because sometimes as creatives, we can really downplay our talents and we can really dismiss what we have and think it's so small. But this is a global giant looking at you and saying, we want to work with you. So it felt really good and I was very validated. After Google, now you get into the business of running a business. You see now, because I started on a very easy, it's like this, I wouldn't call it a hobby, but it's a simple business. And then it's turning, and then now you start getting carried away because now you get all these jobs. People start knowing you in the market. That's when, for me, the rubber hit the road, and not necessarily in a good way, but it really, really hit me that I might have focused just on one side of running my business, which was a creative space, because I really used to love coming up with the concepts, etc. But there was this whole other side of the business that I really was not keen on. And that was, how do you run a creative business? And I think that is always the dilemma for a lot of creatives. You always focus on the output and what we're putting out, but we forget you're running a business. There's HR, there's tax, there is scaling, there is strategy, there is a board. There are all these things that you have to. So for me, went through the entire cycle of being an entrepreneur. KRA, that's our tax authority, come knocking at your door. They're like, have you done your taxes? And you're like, what? I didn't know I was supposed to pay these taxes. Then you sit down and you don't think through how you're scaling because you're seeing the money coming in, but you're not making conscious business decisions. So at some point I decided, you know what? I need to go back to business school. In as much as my client portfolio is growing, I need to go back to business school. Something also maybe I should mention, which is good. You will probably get your star clients, but it's also good for you to remember to grow your client portfolio because anything could happen. Like for me, for Google, they decided to change their strategy and cut their marketing budgets in Africa. And that meant even the sort of volumes of jobs that get were less. And I suffered that because I'd not grown my portfolio of clients because I always knew these guys were going to be my client. I was going to be good. So as an entrepreneur in the creative space, build your pipeline, like sit down and see how you can get other clients. So at the point where I realized that I had a lot of risk because my key client was giving me 60% of my revenue. And on the flip side, I have all this, I'm not understanding how my business is working. So you're seeing the money is coming in. But at the end of the month, you're like, what happened? Like, where has this money gone to? I decided to go back to school. There's a university called USIU. They were partnering with Goldman Sachs, and they had a really nice course for women entrepreneurs to teach them how to scale and to really understand the business side of it. So for me, I was able to go back and relearn. And I think it's shocking when now you're faced with the facts. They're telling you, look at your books, read them. What does it say about your business? So one of the things like I realized was even my business model was wrong. I hadn't put in place any governance structures. Our business is a family business, but you realize with family businesses, you need to even have the right structures in case you don't want cracks to appear. I realized that even how I was hiring, like we were bloated, just all these realizations. And I won't lie, I kind of went into a moment where I wondered, what's the point if like you have this, because people are seeing the nice names, because they're beautiful names, but they're not understanding that you're crying because you're not able to meet, your cash flow is a mess, you're going through HR issues. So it was really, really terrible. And I literally had to just sit down, face the facts, and figure out how I was going to dig out of that hole. So I sat down, I decided to do it the right way. The first thing I did was get a board of advisors. Some of these things sound so fancy when you're running a small outfit, but I'm like, I'm going to learn from these people. These people have already walked the walk. They understand me. They can give me advice and I can learn. So I brought in a new board that helped me come up with a strategy. And it's when we were reviewing the strategy, that's around the time now, it was around 2018. So I had to take time off the business because I was on maternity. But when I came back, I came with a clear mind of, we're going to change this business and we're going to change it in this direction. At that time, COVID happened and I think for me, COVID was a blessing in disguise. I know it has its negative effects. I'm not going to disqualify what it did to the world, but it gave me a time to sit down and right my wrongs, like decide we're going to only focus on this sort of business. We're only going to focus on this sort of client. And we were able to do that, to just change our business within the past 2 years. So COVID also, just before COVID, I also had a chance to sit down with one of our first employees who actually became one of our business partners. And we started asking ourselves, what's our bigger picture in this space? Our origins are fantastic because we are women-owned, women-managed. So there's a world that's rooting for us. And every time we go for pitches, guys are like, I'm very impressed that this is a women-run organization. So we sat down with my colleague, her name is Eunice, and we decided we're going to educate ourselves on events. We've been doing it for a couple of years, but we need to do world-class events. So we both went back to school. And I managed to do my master's in events. Yes, there is a master's in events. And I got a distinction, and it was in a UK university. And the thing that shocked me was they were so impressed at the level of event knowledge we have locally. And that just also validated me that, events is there, like our industry is developing. Then we sat with Eunice and we asked ourselves, what is it that we can do with our knowledge? And we decided to start a school. I was like, I don't want people to suffer the way I suffered going to look for business with my 70 people. Let's start a school where we share our experiences and we articulate what they need to be able to, people who want to get into the event space need to know if they're going to operate in the local Kenyan market. So we started the Events Academy. And for me, it's one of those things that I'm really, really proud of, because now with the school, we teach people how to start their businesses in events so they don't have to go through the craziness of what I went through. And then we also teach people how to do events excellently, because it's a growing market. It's a new market. And I think it needs to be given these people need to be given exposure, and they need to be able to raise it to the next level. Entrepreneurship is glorified, and everyone kind of thinks that we should all have these big businesses that have multiple people you're hiring. But sometimes that's not the story for all of us. I have a beautiful team that we work with. And for me as a creative and a creative entrepreneur, my goal is to just bring people. As we're going, we raise up with other people. So the one thing I would tell myself when I was starting, if I'd go back in time and tell African creative entrepreneurs, is step out boldly, be bold. Like, because you are needed. You have that one thing you're bringing into this beautiful space. And for me, it's step up boldly. Let your art shine. Don't diminish your art, because we're very quick to sit down and apologize. I'm like, no, step up boldly, because you have the gifting, you have the opportunity, and that's the only way you make a difference, if you step up boldly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Legally Clueless powered by Guinness. Be sure to check out the new Guinness Black Shine's Brightest Stories show that spotlights some of Kenya's most amazing and bold artists within the food, dance, fashion, and creative arts, showcasing our rich culture and the future of Kenyan art within Africa and beyond. You can catch all these incredible stories right now on the Guinness Kenya YouTube channel. And remember, you can catch all new Legally Clueless podcast episodes every Monday across all podcasting platforms, as well as new Legally Clueless video episodes on Fridays, only right here on the Legally Clueless YouTube channel.